this week's class. This week we will be on chapter 1. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to be on chapter 1, page 2. So we will be discussing the Contractor State License Board. So on page 2, where it says CSLB, or the Contractor State License Board, what do you guys have to know in regards to this entity? What is the Contractor State License Board? The Contractor State License Board is the state department that issues all the contractor licenses in the state of California. So whether you're a general contractor, a roofer, an electrician, a plumber, a landscaper, you will be applying with the same state department, and the same state department regulates all the contractors in the state of California. Now, in the second paragraph, or you can call it maybe the third paragraph, let's go ahead and read that. It says the highest priority of the CSLB is to protect the public. So I always tell people, yes, is there a lot of clients that take advantage of contractors that are unlicensed? Of course. But there's, at the same time, there's a lot of contractors that do take advantage of clients as well. So the highest priority of the Contractor State License Board is to protect the public. In the following paragraph, the fourth paragraph on page 2, it also lets you know in regards to the registrar. So who is the registrar? Now, the registrar is still a department under the CSLB. So just know, whether or not they say the registrar of contractors or the CSLB, they're talking about the same state department. So think about them as one and the same. The registrar investigates customer complaints. They're the ones that check if your bond is still active. They're the ones that set up sting operations for unlicensed contractors. So think about the CSLB as like the board. They kind of sit in office, they pass the laws, they get tips or information on how to adjust the laws, adjust the fees, adjust the fines. But the registrar are the people out in the field. Those are the people that are really making sure that all the contractors are following the laws. So think about the CSLB more of an office and the registrar as the people more out in the field. However, they are one and the same. They still represent the same state department. In the last two paragraphs on page 2 is letting you know, when do you require a California Contractor State License? Now, this is where a lot of people try to play the system a little bit, right? So if you're doing any type of construction work, any type of construction trade, $500 or more, that includes the value of the materials, so labor and materials, you need a valid contractor license in the state of California. It does not matter if the client purchases the material. I'm gonna say that again. It does not matter if the client purchases the material. They will take the overall value of the project and the overall value of the materials to determine whether or not you are owed a fine. So if the work that you're doing is $500 or more, that includes the labor and the materials, you need a valid contractor license. And again, it does not matter if the client purchases the material. It does not matter if you divide the project up. On Monday you do 500, on Tuesday you do 500, on Wednesday you do 500. It's the overall value of the project and the overall value of the materials. I get this time and time again where some contractors think they're rigging the system, where they're, well, if I do it this way, I don't need the license. Don't do that. Please don't do that. At the end of the day, you're only hurting yourself because of these. There's a lot of false information in construction. So when I do get a lot of the contractors that come here and asking for information, they think that those are ways that they can probably rig the system or beat the system. And then ultimately they get someone else in trouble because they explain this information to someone else. That person doesn't really know in regards to the law, and then they end up getting the fine when they do get caught by the CSLB. So remember, you don't have to get caught by the CSLB once a month for it to really affect you. If you get caught once, those fines are pretty high, and not only that, it's a misdemeanor on your record. So we're gonna actually cover that right now in just a second. But the last two paragraphs on page 2 Go ahead and highlight the last two paragraphs in full. And again, it's explaining to you if the work that you're doing is $500 or more, that includes the value of the labor and materials, the total project, you need a valid contractor license. So now let's go to the first paragraph on page 3. The first paragraph on page 3, go ahead and highlight the entire paragraph in full. And it's telling you, a first conviction for contracting without a license is punishable by a fine up to $5,000 and a jail sentence up to 6 months. And if you read the first sentence, it actually tells you it's a misdemeanor. So this is the disconnect that we have with a lot of contractors that are unaware of the laws. Because if, let's say, you're self-employed and you're doing an honest day's work, you're not trying to take advantage of anyone, you're doing an honest day work just to feed yourself, feed your family, pay your bills, you don't really see the connection between what you're doing and the possible consequences that you can have by contracting without a license. So yes, working without a valid contractor license in the state of California is a misdemeanor. It's very rare where they'll actually take the misdemeanor down to an infraction. For the most part, the misdemeanor stays on your record. So if you compare a misdemeanor, when you hear the term misdemeanor, what do you think of? You think of DUIs, drug, domestic violence, things of that nature. And to yourself, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not doing anything like that of the sort. I'm just doing an honest day work. I agree with you. But the law is the law. At the end of the day, you're still gonna have a misdemeanor on your record. Okay. Now, what is the first consequence? Apart from the misdemeanor, it's a fine up to $5,000 and possible jail time up to 6 months. So what does that mean? It really depends on the situation. So for example, let's say you went to a property and you submitted a bid of $800. I don't believe your fine would be anywhere near the $5,000, and I really doubt that you would get any type of jail time. However, there is another situation. Let's say you get to a property, you submitted a bid of $15,000 or $20,000. You had 2 employees in your truck. You had illegal advertising all over your truck. Obviously, you don't have workers' comp because you don't have a license, right? At that point, your fine would be at $5,000 plus the fine for not having workers' comp, plus the fine for illegal advertising, plus the fine for not having a license. So you can see how easily you'll have the $5,000 for working without the license, plus you'll get an additional fine for not having workers' comp, plus you'll get an additional fine for illegal advertising. Again, the $5,000 is just for working without the license, and I do believe you would get some jail time in that situation. Again, it all depends on the situation. It depends on the judge. It depends on the city. It depends, were you easily, did you easily give in to the cops? All that is factored in to the ultimate decision. The second time you get caught working without the license, it's the same fine plus 20% of your bid and jail time up to 90 days. Again, so you would have an additional misdemeanor on your record. You would have the same fine, but this time they're actually going to add 20% of your overall bid plus some jail time up to 90 days. Again, it all depends on the situation. Do not fall for, well, my friend said it's only going to be this, or this contractor told me it's only going to be this. No, every situation is different. And I also want you to focus on the last 2 sentences, still in the first paragraph, where it's telling you what happens if you're convicted of fraud. So what is fraud? Fraud is a friend lets you borrow the license, or you take a license number from a different company and you're submitting bids with that license number. That is considered fraud. That is a fine up to $10,000 and jail time up to 1 year. Again, it all depends on the situation. And not only that, you are liable for a civil suit, which means that let's say you did take a license number from a different company without them knowing, obviously, and you're submitting bids with it. At that point, that company that you stole the license number from, they can actually sue you directly as well. So this is just criminal charges. In the second paragraph on page 3, it tells you, it is a misdemeanor for an unlicensed person to advertise for a construction project who does not hold a contractor license in the classification covering the project. However, an unlicensed person may advertise for work if the contract price for labor, material, and all other items is less than $500, and the advertisement states that the person is not a licensed contractor. So Two things I want you to take away from this paragraph. Number one, if you do have a license and you're advertising for work, make sure you're only advertising for work for the classification or the work that falls under your trade. So for example, if you're a painter, you can't put in your advertisement that you also do electrical work. So if you have the C33 painting license, you can't put painting and drywall, because drywall is a different license. You cannot put painting and plumbing, because plumbing is a different license. So you can only advertise for work that falls under your classification. Number two, the second thing I want you to take out of this is, technically, by law, you do not need a license to advertise. However, in every single advertisement, you have to put that you are an unlicensed contractor and you can only do work $500 and below. That includes